You, no doubt, have heard of doubting Thomas. Even outside of religious circles, it's a term used for those of little or no faith. But it's an unfair characterization of the disciple we hear about in today's gospel, and I want to put that notion to rest right away. Thomas claimed he couldn't believe that Jesus had risen from the dead without tangible evidence. He wasn't asking, though, for anything special. The other disciples had already seen Jesus in this new way that he came among them after the resurrection. Thomas only wanted what the rest already had, to see this incredible thing for himself. And after all, the other disciples hadn't necessarily believed Mary Magdalene when she told them Jesus was gone from the tomb, or when she told them she had seen the Lord. They needed to see for themselves. Thomas just had the misfortune of being absent when Jesus made his first appearance to the gathered group of disciples, huddled in fear and confusion in their room. But when the others tell Thomas they've seen Jesus, Thomas is honest and says what he needs. He needs to see for himself. He says he needs to touch Jesus' wounds as proof. And when Jesus appears to them again, he offers this proof to Thomas. But instead of examining the evidence, Thomas utters this statement: "My Lord and my God." Thomas doesn't just recognize Jesus, his teacher, the man he had been following, but recognizes Jesus as God, something that no one else had done up to this point. And so Thomas believes. And Jesus makes a statement then that is not meant so much for Thomas as it's meant for us, the ones who will come after, who will never know Jesus in his bodily form. Happy are those who don't see and yet believe. This is our charge, to believe. And my question today is, how do you believe? Not what do you believe, that is a whole other question, but how? How do you believe? This is not a question that I will or can answer for you, but it's a good thing to wonder about. How do we believe any of this outrageous story of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection? If we don't believe it, or don't believe parts of it, then we're in good company with Thomas, and we are in good company with each other. One thing I know about belief that I can tell you is that there is not a correct way to believe. We don't all believe in the same way, or for the same reasons, or follow the same path to belief. And belief and doubt go hand in hand. There are so many things about God that we can't know for certain. Certainty is actually the opposite of faith. So we all have doubts and questions and confusion. This is a good place to bring your doubts and questions and wrestle with them in a community of others wrestling with their questions. There are so many concepts that strain our imagination, so many times that we just want some tangible evidence and can't see it. And other times, we see God all around, in each other, in acts of love, in nature. We feel God in our hearts, and we see that this life is made better in relationship with God. And then sometimes we don't. One of the beautiful things about a faith community is that when those moments come, we can believe for each other. We can believe for each other until faith returns. The disciples did that for Thomas. When he doubted, forcefully, "I will not believe unless I put my hand on his wounds," the other disciples didn't ostracize him. He remained in community with them, and he was still with them when Jesus appeared again. We don't do this faith thing alone. We have each other, and we have the Holy Spirit. In this gospel passage, there are some other really important things that happen before we even hear about Thomas. The first thing that happens is that Jesus appears somehow in this room with the disciples. The first thing he says is peace. Peace be with you. The disciples were afraid even before Jesus appeared. And I can imagine that the appearance of Jesus in a closed room, someone whom they knew had died, didn't immediately alleviate that fear. He appears among them, risen from the dead, which is frightening enough. But these are the very people who, though they were his closest friends, had abandoned and denied him just a few days prior. And the first thing Jesus does is to give them peace. No recrimination, no pronouncements about what a great thing he just did, just peace. Peace be with you. And then Jesus shows them his wounds, not as a rebuke against them for what he has gone through, but as another sign. It's really me, and I have overcome death. Jesus is there having conquered death as a child of God and as a child of humanity, bearing the wounds of the world in his flesh, and yet now somehow alive, but different, almost unrecognizable in this new form, but still, Jesus himself. Then Jesus says, "I am sending you." And he breathes on them. He breathes on them and says, "Receive the Holy Spirit." Jesus is sending them out into the world filled with the Holy Spirit. Jesus sends them out to put their belief into action. And that is another way to think about that question. How do you believe? How do you put your belief into action? What do you do with your belief? How are you believing out there in the world? In the first reading today from the Acts of the Apostles, we heard about the apostles getting into some trouble for teaching in Jerusalem. The disciples, after receiving the Holy Spirit, are now apostles sent out to share the good news of Jesus. And it seems that they can't not speak about it. They are teaching about Jesus in spite of the consequences. They've taken their belief out into the world. And we are called to do the same in our own ways. We aren't all required to go speak in the public square, although there is certainly merit to that. When we, believing the good news of Jesus, see and speak out against oppression and injustice, it's important that we as Christians make clear to the world that that is not our way. The disciples believed by speaking truth to power, and so can we. But it can be fraught right now to be proclaiming the good news of Jesus out in the world. To identify as a Christian is to open yourself to misunderstanding, ridicule, or sometimes outright hostility. But the good news that we have to tell is something that can heal this world. The good news of God's love, of the resurrection, means that God still shows up in this world. How do we tell the world how God shows up in sorrow and fear and disaster? How do we tell how forgiveness and reconciliation are possible? Believing in the resurrection is believing that we can make a difference in the world, that we have the power through the love of God to heal a bit of the brokenness we see around us. We believe by speaking the good news of the truth of love, by showing up for justice, by not giving in to despair. Believing without seeing could be called hope. I have not seen the risen Christ in the way that the disciples did. I have not known Jesus in the way that the disciples did. But I have seen signs and wonders in the belief of my community and in the love that I experience in this beautiful and broken world. Peace be with you, Jesus says. Here, take the Holy Spirit and go.